Hello everyone, welcome to Thanks Invest. Talk about investing, finance, and first women. For today's very terms only. The investment I'm going to talk about today will be Ethereum ticker ETH. I know it's my second video that I'm posting again today. Respect to Ethereum, I'm recording at 1:03 p.m. on the Eastern Time. Current trade like $2,797, up about 3.20%. And respect to the media affectation and the market dynamics is relatively interesting today, right? Ever since the morning, I would say like early in the morning, around like 7 a.m. all the way to like 9 a.m. We were kind of hovering on a sideways fashion around like the $2,529 level, basically going down from the $2,700 level that we were kind of hovering the day before, right? It seems like with respect to the, the adjustments coming from the buy the rumors, sell the news type of affectation was canceled out by two large purchases by and I don't know the entity of these investors. I think these are composition of whale or institutional investors that bought two large transactions. One that happened around like 9:15 a.m. and the other one happened exactly at 10 a.m. this morning, right? Which subsequently drove Ethereum to go up from the 2,529 to go all the way to one time at $2,820, right? So with respect to the investigations on like what's the rationale behind this large purchases or this large volume, if you may, it's still unclear to me, right? But it seems like this could be potentially a pump and dump type of affectation that we're currently experiencing right now, right? And then looking at the news front, just like happening in the last 5 hours so far, we got a lot of news coming from specifically from Decrypt. I think Decrypt released about like five different articles on Ethereum earlier today, all spent in the last 3 hours so far. And I'm just keeping tabs, right? So 1 hour ago, Coinbase expands Apple Pay options for Bitcoin and Ethereum buys. So that's one news that came in from Decrypt. Obviously, it's a good stamp of approval from Apple just to name drop, and also it is substantive, knowing the fact that we are shifting more of a commercializations for crypto assets, specifically for Bitcoin and Ethereum. So that's another great stamp of approval from large corporations. And then the other one is coming from Decrypt again, talk about basically the imbalance in supply and demand dynamics. So Ethereum is basically burning about $10,000 every minute after the transition, to the upgrades of EIP 1559, right? So obviously with this imbalance, will subsequently drive some surging pressure, which is one of the reasons why we're seeing the dynamics that we also are looking at right now. And then we see another news coming from Quartz. So Ethan Allen, which I believe is if I'm not mistaken, it's a consumer retail companies. I think they sell either clothing or furniture, if I'm not mistaken. They are changing their ticker on the stock exchange, from ETH to something else, right? Basically to prevent confusions among investors, right? So that's just another name drop. But obviously, it's more of an adjacent news, nothing really substantive into driving some surge, but it's more just like exposure in a marketability perspective, right? And then we see other news coming again from Decrypt 3 hours ago. Let's talk about the increase in interest among institutional investors, basically looking at the holdings among various different corporations and large institutional investors on their, increasing purchases of Ethereum, which is another good thing. So another great news. And then there's some other regurgitation news around the London fork debut, like what to expect. Is it going to be potential sell-off? Like, what is the implication behind this upgrade? What's the long-term value proposition for this upgrade, and et cetera, right? And this are coming from like Reuters and Decrypt. So it seems like in the last 5 hours, Reuters and Decrypt have been relatively aggressive in terms of, the media affectation front, right? But ultimately, we are in the business of risk mitigations. We are in the business of just reading charts and seeing what is the truth behind the numbers in a psychological perspective, looking at the activities that investors are doing versus what the media is telling us, right? The last thing I want you guys to do is to be chasing the pump or using emotions based on what you see on the news or based on how the price is fluctuating, right? We are in the business of risk mitigating. We're not in the business of looking at the price level is going down, so we're buying just because it's a dip, or we're chasing because it's going up. Like we should never think in that perspective, right? And I could understand why I get pushbacks from people when there's the rationale behind what our expectation is doesn't come true based on what we see. But because we are investing, we are not wizards. We do not predict how the media affectation is going to come out for that specific time or specific date, right? And that's why it's important that we look at the charts in the frames of reference for resistance for us to dollar cost average wisely. So I'm going to go through the technical analysis again to see how we're trending going forward. How's the momentum looking like right now, right? So stay tuned, stick around, let's make some money. Alright, so moving on to the technical analysis for Ethereum, taking ETH, I'm recording as of 1:13 p.m. on Eastern Time. Currently trading $2,791, up about 2.93% so far. You can see that with respect to the technical analysis, we've been basically surging ever since the bottom that we hit about like 1750 on July 20th, and we've been surging for basically about 2 weeks so far, right? To surge all the way to today's all-time high, $2,820, and it seems like we're kind of normalizing down right now, right? And the surge that we saw that we hit from 2,529, basics 2 days low, to all the way at 2,820 is mainly coming from two specific large transactions that was basically executed by institutional investors with a combination of obviously public investors, right? So we can look at that in a more prominent perspective by looking at the 5-minute chart. You can see that there were multiple occurrences. We have some purchasing power around like 9:30, 9:55, and then we have one-time green candle that was purchased by institutional investors, and then subsequent to that, we had large whale that came in and bought a large volume at exactly 10:10 a.m. this morning on Eastern Time. And ever since then, you see a little bit of a FOMO effects that happen on top of the FOMO effects that you see here in combination. And then we have some people sell off, but ever since then, you see a little bit more people FOMOing again. And basically, we kind of consolidate on a sideways fashion right now. So now let's go back to the more of a daily perspective, take a look at how severe is the buying pressure that we're experiencing right now. Right, you could see that with respect to MACD, we are extremely crossed up right now, right? Our side, we're basically extremely overbought right now. We are basically above the danger zone. If you look at the yellow line is there for a reason. And knowing the fact that we did break the 2,750, we are basically hovering in between levels right now. So if we hear more positive news coming, the next level is going to be 3,000. We don't have like a gap in between, like we do have a gap technically in 2,900, but you could see how like non-substantive is it, right? It's like these are not really platforms that you could escalate off of, right? So it's a good news that we actually are building a new platform at the 2,750 because we actually broke through that. So congratulations to all of us that we actually are forming a relatively good base right now. So technically, in a near-term perspective, 2,450, if we normalize during this weekend, should be the bottom. 2,150 would be a relatively stretched level for us to get down to right now because of the fact that you will require to break through how many levels? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 levels of resistance levels for us to get there. So it will require a consecutive of negative news for us to get there. And, with the percolating news that we've been experiencing on a daily basis right now, on top of the whale purchasing, I think our spidey sense need to kind of, increase at the moment right now. Like, I don't advise chasing the pump, especially on the activity that we see today, right? We are in the business of risk mitigation. When you see something as, dramatic as it is today, the last thing you want to do is to give in to your emotions and like buy because like, oh, it's pumping up, so it's gonna keep pumping up, right? Remember the next level that we have to get up to is 3,000, right? And 3,000 again, it's not like a substantive level. 3,150 is the true substantive level that we should search next to, right? And on top of the fact that Friday and Saturday are typically red days historically, if you count back the days, right? Without adjusting for obviously negative media affectations or positive media affectation that will kind of net cancel out, right? To make it more normalized, if you may, right? So something we have to watch out. And I think if you were to buy now, I think the likelihood of you actually losing money would be higher than the probability of you gaining the incremental, let's say $200, knowing the fact that we've been stretched up exponentially already, right? Ultimately, I'm just someone that's reading the chart. I have no bias or emotions towards what I'm seeing right now. And today's surge was a surprise to me. Um, and But hopefully this is helpful, because ultimately investing is a practice of risk mitigation, and especially when you see something as dramatic as it is, it's almost like curated with, the triangulations between the whales and the media affectation. Right after 10:10 a.m. this morning, we had basically a collections of 7 positive news coming from Reuters, from Decrypt, and Decrypt released like four positive articles on Ethereum. So definitely watch out. Be cautious, be careful. Again, if you don't agree with me, that's fine. But just don't want people to like lose their stuff. I don't just that's my intentions, right? I don't really gain anything by saying this, right? I'm just reading the chart. So hopefully this is helpful. All right, just to recap our numbers and technical analysis again, right? With respect to a current level, we are forming a new substantive level at the 2,750, and we're further consolidating at that level. So that's a good sign because it means that we are improving in a technical perspective. We're forming a new substantive resistance level, right? So the next level that we should potentially leap down during this weekend, if we have negative news coming, because the dramatization from the whales purchasing and the curation from the news, the 4 consecutive positive decrypt news, your spidey sense needs to be tingling right now, if you may, right? So I think ideally I would be buying at the 2,450. But if you want to buy now, and because you want to just get rid of your FOMO feeling, again, that's an emotional play. I don't suggest it, but if that's what you want, long term wise, we're still hitting like a way higher level, right? 9,800. With contingencies of the corporate adoption of 20%, right? That would be 4 times your money from here, right? Do we see 2,150? I think that, because of the fact that we have durate for such a long surge days, I think over 2 weeks now, right? For us to crack down 5 resistance levels, would be unlikely in just like the near term, right? It's not logical for us to sell down by 3 resistance levels or 5 resistance levels to be more specific, right? So I think in the near term, no. But if we cool down after the London fork, right, obviously, and then we have negative news that's percolating, the first level that we'll reach down to will be, we're above 2,750, so we'll hover around 2,750, and then the next level potentially will go down to the 2,450, which is the next comfort level, right? But that would require a lot of selling pressure, a lot of negative news for us to get there, right? So that's not logical right now, right? So I think the new comfort bottom is really the 2,450. I think this is relatively going to be a stretch for us to see like 2,150 during this weekend or in a week or so, right? Because again, we've endured about 2 weeks of surging pressure. I do see a sell off coming. It's normal for us to see that. It's just people taking profit, especially on this weekend. But I don't see the severity of all the way down to the 2,250 or even 2,150 per se. I give this maybe a 5% likelihood we'll actually get to 2,150. Alright, so that's it for today. Respect my technical analysis on the Ethereum ticket ETH again. Hopefully this is helpful into understanding what's going on right now. I know there's a lot of volatile times that we've been enduring and potentially ahead of us as well, but make sure that we are thinking logically and not use emotions when we are investing, right? And hopefully this is helpful, and I hope it's not confusing, and I try to make it as clear and as easily digestible as possible. But feel free to give me any advice or any tips if you may. I'm always trying to be helpful. I spend take time out of my days to do this, right? And hopefully you guys understand where I'm coming from and slowly learn, you know, the pattern that I use to invest. So eventually you could use this by yourself without any guidance from me, and you could teach other people collectively as well. Right? Really appreciate you. Stay tuned for this coming up. Take care. Bye.